Meng Tian's finger gently moved and a transport route map appeared. According to the energy rating, it clearly showed signs of danger. This barren planet should be filled with life reactions. Of course, due to physical phenomena, there could be errors. But everyone, look at the light blue ripple. Everyone in the meeting room wrinkled their eyebrows. The light blue ripple seemingly should not appear here. I'm not sure if everyone remembers the KPO-237 interstellar incident, Meng Tian mentioned, and instantly, everyone in the room sat up straight. What you mean is that everything before us is an illusion? Lieutenant General Hobb remarked in a sunken voice. Too many incidental factors are inevitable. I think that what we see in front of us is an illusion. When this kind of light blue energy wave appears, it suggests that the planet that we see is two-dimensional, not three-dimensional. Meng Tian firmly stated. The dimensions of the universe was a feat that humans had yet to be able to get to the bottom of, but it could be certain that the general physical range was three-dimensional. However, a two-dimensional object, a flat planet, had appeared in space, which implied that everything in front of their eyes was a setting. But this setting was disguised highly realistically. Having said that, everyone in the room stayed quiet and just stared at the energy display. It was very realistic, which meant that there was one possibility, but it was not absolute. Meng Tian, you can voice out your opinion, Hobb said. Yes, General. I believe that what we are facing is an illusion. The other party is an intelligent life form who has grasped more advanced technology than us. It could be humans or other civilizations. My personal judgment is that they have an enmity against us, as this sort of concealed habits and confusion is targeted towards us humans. I personally advocate that we do not miss this opportunity. Another connotation for exploration is taking risks. Once we miss this opportunity, it could possibly result in greater hidden dangers for the Milky Way Alliance, and we do not know yet if our comrades are still alive or dead. I am willing to be in the frontier, Meng Tian said. Everyone was debating aplenty, discussing the possibility of this. This meant that 60% of them still felt that Meng Tian was being ridiculous, but the other 40% was supportive. The Milky Way Alliance's exploration knowledge range was already very broad and the possibility of an unknown civilization was very low, not to mention a foreign human civilization. And the energy display could also have errors, so this solitary death planet could be a dead planet clouding the space reef. Experienced captains generally would not take such risks. This unreliable factor was definitely not only picked up by Meng Tian alone, it was just that everyone opted to be safe. But this also missed the meaning of exploration. Humans innately had already lost the adventurous spirit in those days of interstellar voyaging. Lieutenant General Hobb, however, had other considerations. Under such situations with doubts, he could not give up and ignore the two missing ships. Finally, as the highest-ranking commander, Hobb, who should have remained neutral, stated his stand that he supported Meng Tian's speech. The Milky Way Alliance exploration fleet was split into 3 units. Meng Tian was arranged to the first unit, a frontier team consisting of 3 convoy ships, which will follow her line of thought to close in on the planet. The second unit would be the reinforcement team, providing the 3 convoy ships all the support they require at any time. The third unit was the safeguard team, which would consist of the fleet's 2 motherships as its core. The meaning of safeguarding in this case was to survive regardless of what happened. The third unit warship's mission this time was to break through and relay information back to the Milky Way Alliance at once should they encounter unpredictable danger. It was obvious, with such an arrangement, that Hobb deep down also agreed with Meng Tian's judgment and planned for the worst. Meng Tian's number 12 ship flew in front, and the other 2 frontier ships, the number 7 and number 11 ships, followed behind. Arrived at destination, the frontier team's task was not to immediately carry out search and rescue, but to grasp control of the solar system preemptively and set up a sentinel defense line to prepare a safe and secure solar system environment for the reinforcement spaceship that would come in next. Of course, at the same time, they were inquiring directions by throwing stones. Once danger occurred, they could effectively gain the safety of an entire fleet for a small price. The 3 warships slowly slowed down and started a safety assessment around the solar system. Sleek spaceships and space mecha rushed out of the warship one by one, taking control of the solar system's surroundings. Pissed. The display in front of Meng Tian gently flashed. The other two warship captains relayed their messages. Captain Meng Tian, judging from the current situation, we did not discover any source of danger from other coordinate positions in the solar system. There is only one coordinate left, the MG-17A Death Planet. The exploration ship reported that spatial turbulence was detected in the coordinate positions. It could be the violent movements from the space collapse. What the two captains were implying was to carry out defense against the MG-17A Death Planet, and not to take the risk in advance. The gist of the frontier team was not to advance bravely without a plan, but to reach the goal. Just by looking at the current situation, there was no need to enter the Death Planet surrounded by spatial turbulence. The space collapse activity was akin to tide water, with moments of rise and fall. If you have no opinions, we would assume a one-line battle array. Both captains, I have a different opinion. Meng Tian gave a glance at the planetary image displayed on the viewfinder window. When observing from the space telescope, the ice scrap tracks spurned by the spatial turbulence could be seen with the naked eye. What a beautiful picture. What? Captain Meng Tian, please keep in mind that you are the captain and you are responsible for the entire warship. Both captains were visibly dissatisfied. Meng Tian's remark at the captains' meeting did make them grow admiration for her. But this did not mean that she would be able to lead the frontier team this time. After all, she was only a student with aspirations, merely just a substitute captain. If it were not for their prior admiration, they would not have asked for her opinion and would have just directly stated what should be done instead. Meng Tian, however, did not pay heed to them. Her eyes stared fixedly on the planetary image. Now she was certain that everything in front of their eyes was definitely an illusion. If it was energy leakage caused by the space collapse, it would undoubtedly not show such patterns. This was absolutely a sign of life. All comrades, get ready for battle. Aim the main ship gun accurately at the MG-17A Death Planet and shoot in 15 seconds time, counting down from now. As the captain, Meng Tian held the decision-making power. This is the time for her to test out her judgment. If it were a two-dimensional illusion, the planet could not possibly move by itself. This was its breaking point. Regardless of whether it was real or fake, it would be made known once a shot was made. Sometimes, concrete actions were more effective than thinking too much. Boom! A laser shot blasted off as everyone in the rest of the warships quietly waited. The whole space shook, and immediately after, everything in front of their eyes cracked, shattering like a mirror. The Death Planet disappeared, and replacing it was a vibrant planet. Immediately undergo scanning. Meng Tian suppressed the excitement in her heart as she issued the command right away. When the planetary landscape appeared on the display, everyone was stunned by what they saw. In this unknown solar system, there was actually, right at this moment, a chain of ripples appeared all around space. Buzz. In a flash, white rays blossomed one at a time like fresh flowers in the midst of the void. The entire fleet was brought to a standstill under the radiance, and all the engines stopped working. The Milky Way Alliance headquarters received only the exploration team's SOS and an image before the entire exploration team completely vanished from the universe. The SIG-Top 32 battle had begun with the Saruman Snake Battle Team against the Storm Battle Team. The Saruman Snake Battle Team, who had been glorious at Elite Academy X and were the strongest kings in this competition, had ushered in their first battle, and the opponent was the Storm Battle Team, whose capabilities did not lose to theirs. The venue that was used was the Royal College. This was actually also a privilege for the students in the Royal College. After all, they were the only ones in the entire Milky Way Alliance that could most conveniently witness a battle of such level and feel its atmosphere, especially since it was undoubtedly important for everyone to experience battles between experts. For the first day of the competition, there would be 4 rounds, and each round would have 8 battles. There would be 1 round in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 1 at night. The Saruman Snake was set to battle in the first round, and as the team highly regarded by people, the battle was also highly popular at Aslan's Royal College. Ever since the fact that Wang Zheng had once been an exchange student at the Royal College was made known, he garnered quite some support. Si Jiali and a bunch of friends were among those. The Wang Zheng in the past was already very special, but they never thought he would return in such a fashion and torment quite a number of people to the point of irritation. The members of the two solar system teams had not left. This was considered a rare privilege as members of teams who had failed would usually have already left. The reason why the solar system was quite generous this time was also because there were still two teams which were primarily led by people from the solar system that had yet to be eliminated, so they stayed. Without a doubt, the first battle was a battle to control the flow. Both sides entered the arena. The Saruman snake sent out Achilles, a warrior from the moon. The warrior from the storm battle team was the captain. Captain Sati entered the battle straight away. Judging by the battle tactics, the storm battle team held a certain advantage. They had obviously succeeded in avoiding Wang Zheng. This was one of Saruman snake's disadvantages. As long as the opponent avoided Wang Zheng, they would be able to seize the initiative rights, and as the most reliable core of Saruman snake, Wang Zheng would basically not be the first to enter the arena. Now it was up to whether Achilles could hold up against the strong attacks of the storm battle team's captain. The storm battle team's morale roused. Clearly, their judgment was accurate. They were also afraid of the unlikely possibility that Wang Zheng would enter the battle first, then they would suffer a double loss. But in practicality, the Saruman snake battle team was not God, so they had still chosen to play safe in the battle of the top 32. Upon seeing Sati, the Saruman snake battle team reacted calmly. It was not certain whether they were that confident or if they felt that they were relying on Wang Zheng to fight anyway, so they did not care. Achilles was very calm. The mech used was still the Heavenly Dragon Knight. He quietly stood tall in the battle arena, carrying the silver-colored dragon lance. The lance was the Heavenly King family's signature. On the opposite side was Sati's Mad Mob mech. Achilles naturally knew what the current situation was. The storm battle team had premeditated that he would be the first to fight and for Sati to personally enter the battle. It was to ensure a stable win against him in the first battle. In a short space of time, the sun god Achilles had actually become useless, and was starting to get caught. A slight hint of a smile, carrying a tad of ridicule, could be seen on the sides of Achilles' lips. The sides of Sati's lips also turned into a smile. The battle weapon chosen by the opponent was as mentioned in the data. It was said that this person loved this type of mech. In front of his Mad Mob battle weapon, any warrior-type mech would be looking for death. The Mad Mob mech was a Manilasua warrior-type mech model that veered towards offense. The weapons were two short-handled axes, which were very suitable for killing a group of enemies. It would require someone with quite good close-range offensive skills and confidence to handle it. The glass heart of the Moon people and their nitpicking, princely mentality was key to the upcoming team battle. Although Wang Zheng was definitely scary, Achilles was the core of command. His Lighthouse Warrior, paired with Ability X, could certainly build up an impressive effect. As such, on top of having to win this battle, they also had to destroy their opponents psychologically in order to plant the seeds of victory. The reason for choosing the Mad Mob mech was because it was better suited for such flow. Facing the Heavenly Dragon Knight's dashing style, the Mad Mob very casually shouldered the titanium axes swinging left and right pointedly at the Heavenly Dragon Knight, looking very pleased. Such sleight was also a kind of display of strength, but Achilles, of course, would not be angered so easily. The Heavenly Dragon Knight positioned its lance, prepared for a sudden advance. The Mad Mob's aura also elevated, seemingly casual. Sati readied himself as well. Boom! The engines of both mecha roared at the same time, directly rushing to the center. A lance lunged out directly towards the Mad Mob in the midst. Sati evidently would not dodge. His axe swayed, abruptly blocking the lance. At the same time, as the mech turned back, the other axe swiftly cut in, sweeping towards the Heavenly Dragon Knight's head. The Heavenly Dragon Knight moved backwards in a flash, passing one axe. The Mad Mob kicked out suddenly. Boom! The Heavenly Dragon Knight mech timely retrieved his lance to block it, but he was still kicked 56 meters back before coming to a stop. There was no suspense over the victory. The hold that an Earth-ranked warrior had over a normal warrior was definite, it was just waiting to see how Sati was planning to end it. After just one round of slight contact, Sati could gauge that this Achilles had skills. He was very stable. People of Manalasuo did not really like to defend, especially using the Mad Mob, so there was even less defense. The axes collided and crossed, producing clamoring sounds like war drums. Ping! The mech was controlled strongly and abruptly burst forward to attack. Achilles was the least afraid, pulling at his lance, rapidly lunging it in a straight line. Boom! The axe directly hit the lance. Sati belted out a startling roar. Kill! He wildly chopped at the heavenly dragon knight mech all of a sudden like he had turned mad. The fierce chopping speed made it seem as if he suddenly had many additional limbs. This was how Sati acquired the nickname of Desperate Mad Mob. Three-headed multi-limb mad-killing assault. The axes swung repeatedly at ferocious speeds. He always used such strong, domineering attacks of the axe to oppress any type of weapon. Titanium blades and titanium swords had all been beaten into dogs. There were still people using such an outdated weapon like the lance. The solar system sure liked acting dumb. What was the use of a rod? The best weapon was the axe. In a flash, the heavenly dragon knight became like a canoe in the middle of a storm, with only the option of warding off. Wang Zheng and the others who were below slightly blanked out as they saw through Sadie's motive. He was not trying to attack the person, but the heavenly dragon knight's alloy lance. This meant that Sati wanted to torture Achilles. Generally speaking, at such occasions, unless there was a huge personal or national grudge, no one would pull such acts. On one hand, it was very taxing on the physical body, and on the other, it was very easy to make enemies. This Sati could not possibly be superficial to the point of using Achilles as a stepping stone to become famous, which left only one possibility. He wanted to crush Achilles in order to prepare for the following team battle. Does this fellow's brain have problems? If the first-rate alloy lance could be broken so easily, he might as well hold a bamboo. Zhang Shan pouted. He liked acting dumb, but he did not like others doing so. This fellow's ability X is very special, it could be useful. Boom! The heavenly dragon knight's alloy lance broke following the echo of Sadie's blow-up. The mad mob followed suit, moving in to give a kick in the knee, and at the same time, the axes collided. Mad War. Double ghost shooting. Achilles' ability X burst out in a flash. The heavenly dragon knight rapidly retreated and leapt away. Repulsive force. It was baffling how the lance had broken. This could only have meant that the other party's ability X had corrosion-like effects. If not, he couldn't have broken the lance. Following the skillful manipulating of ability X upon reaching Earth rank, there would always be some small experiences gained, which would permeate into the battle details. This type of ability could be used in the midst of a fatal attack, but instead he had used it to break Achilles' weapon. Does this fellow want to take Achilles as a sacrificial chess piece? Zhang Shan had seen through it. Lai Xin's legs switched positions. She was utterly soul-stirringly sexy, wearing only a tiny red singlet. It was accurate to say that 100% of the men present had all glanced at her. However, at this moment, Lai Xin's face held an additional ridiculing cold smile. She knew, Achilles and her had been taken as just passerbys. It was not a problem of being shrouded under Wang Zheng's radiance, it was also because they had performed badly at the qualifying rounds. The past solar system genius generation's radiance had fallen back, and the only thing left was probably their pride. During the qualifying rounds, it was because the two of them were unlucky enough to be surrounded. One has to admit that sometimes, luck was very important. The reason why Zhang Shan could run away at the start was also because Achilles and Lai Xin had attracted the attention of quite a number of people. Achilles and Lai Xin had chosen to open up their energy shields and admit defeat for the sake of the official competition after. If the two of them were heavily injured, even if they managed to escape, the official competition would be done for as nobody knew the qualifying rounds would end in advance at that time. The education that two of them had received from their families since young, and their judgment, led them to believe that admitting defeat was the best choice, and at the same time, they believed that Wang Zheng could turn the tide. Since Wang Zheng had made such actions, he had definitely prepared to take responsibility. The two of them had to preserve their abilities for the official competition. If the two of them were to be heavily injured, then Saruman Snake would have no one to use. And such a decision was undoubtedly rational and cool-headed, but the outside world was not concerned of the process. As a result, the two were seen as far worse than Zhongshan and Mu Zhen, basically treating them as burdens. Sati shouldered the axes and laughed out. Admit defeat. My killing desire leaves people with psychological trauma. Achilles threw away the two sections of the lance in his hand. Such a feeling really was not so good. The Doyle family had experienced 2 generations of glory. Although ultimately reaching a peak, all generations had king-like existences. Passing down to him, he was actually being looked down upon by a Manalasuo person. If you can hit me, then it will be counted as your win. Achilles said. Sati was stupefied. Did his ears have issues? Everyone in the hall was also stunned. This person wanted to act dumb at such a time. It was said that the Earthlings had inferiorities and were conceited, the people from the moon were fragile and prideful, Martians were barbaric and arrogant. The 3 disgraces of the solar system fully demonstrated humans' inferiority. The majority of the spectators were Aslan people, and Aslan people were best at analyzing people. In a second, it became a joke to all of them. Although Aslan people did not like the people of Manalasuo, they disliked the weak even more. Sati's eyes were stone cold, uttering the words, "I'll kill you." Like a hurricane, the mad mob charged towards the heavenly dragon knight, who had lost its alloy lance. If the opponent was courting death, death it shall be. Achilles' eyes were mercury-like. Despite the opponent's attacks, he did not retreat. The mech pressed on in a steady pace, moving left and right, like quicksilver flowing in all directions. Heavenly King Arts. Such inspiration. Mastering the fact-tracking of military attacks, the mad mob's attacks were fast and furious. However, his every move was calculated, dodging the opponent's attacks with ease. Witnessing the rapid growth of Wang Zheng, how could he, Achilles, not be anxious? Even Zhongshan had made such progress, much less Achilles, the sun god. He had joined Saruman's snake alongside Wang Zheng for 2 reasons: to learn as much as he could from Wang Zheng and to challenge himself to betterment. If Lear chose to fight against growth, then he chose to observe growth. Being a bystander, he was able to appreciate more. The axes were swung frantically in the air more than 20 times without hitting the targets. The fierceness of the mad mob and ease of the heavenly dragon knight formed a sharp contrast. In a flash, the 2 axes were up in the air again. The heavenly dragon knight mech interjected and buckled his arms. In a quick maneuver, the mad mob was thrown off. The heavenly dragon knight followed closely and shot a kick. Not to be outdone, Sati was able to regain control of his mech in midair. Inconceivably, Sati was able to put some distance between them, leaving Achilles' kick frustrated. Ability X, Metal Control. This was Sati's understanding of metallic elements. He had a certain degree of manipulation of any object containing metal. It was impossible to avoid this attack with strong control. The mech was grounded. Sati was getting somber. Achilles was not as incompetent as you would imagine. The 2 axes interlocked abruptly. The mad mob attacked again, not giving his opponent a moment of breather. In the onrush, 2 axes were flung without a warning. The heavenly dragon knight evaded instinctively. Sati made a breakthrough and punched out. Not retreating, the heavenly dragon knight met it with a similar punch. Boom! The 2 mecha entangled. The 2 soaring axes missed each other, swiveled and flew back. Sati let out a slightest sneer. But at this very moment, the 2 axes froze in midair as well. The gravity of Achilles. Metal control versus universal gravitation. Power versus power. Ability X versus ability X. A face-to-face confrontation between Achilles and Sati. During entanglement, no obvious technique would be involved, except to apply more brute force. The stronger the power, the stronger you were. The stronger the ability X, the more powerful you were. Spirits rampaged. Both Achilles and Sati possessed B-grade ability X's. The power that would be released during a stalemate would be quite astonishing. The mecha felt the effects of the strong assaults. Sati's mad mob mech was shrouded with a strong count of yellow force, whilst Achilles' heavenly dragon knight mecha silver force. It was a mistake to assume that in a stalemate such as this, one could avoid the realm of an Earth rank level ability X. Although the strength of the ability may be comparable, the difference would differ in the level of control exerted, thus determining the outcome of the stalemate. Sadie's inner rage began to emerge. He relished such contests because he could shred the opponent into pieces. Sati was much stronger than this effeminate man from the moon, be it physically or ability X. Roar. With a loud grunt, Sati was determined to take down the Heavenly Dragon Knight, but Heavenly Dragon Knight stood unwavered, much like the two axes in the air. What the hell was this? Grunt, 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 grunt. After 4 ensuing grunts, Sadie's mech began to exert some force. His ability X craved to overpower the opponent, but the two axes remained frozen in the air. Only his mad mob trembled a few times under the intense power distortion. Not only was the ability X limited during the qualifying round, a number of the warriors who surrounded them had used laser guns. Counterattack. Death was imminent. It was useless even if you traded for more lives. Unlike Wang Zheng, Achilles formed his own judgments. Even now, being a member of Saruman's snake, it did not mean that he inspired to be Wang Zheng. He was the descendant of the Heavenly King. A descendant of a great warrior whom even the gods admired. Boom. The sky shone brightly by the silvery shine, just like the moon. The Earth rank level ability X. The second warrior from the Saruman snake battle team to have attained an Earth rank ability X had emerged. Despite having attained Earth rank, Sati was much older than Achilles. However, the vast difference was evident in the grade level. Compared to Achilles' universal gravitation control, his metallic control seemed ordinary. Even more formidable was Achilles' combination of the Heavenly King arts and universal gravitation. Any retreat would be impossible during a stalemate. The power from both parties would intertwine. The party that was overpowered would have to endure the full intensity of the combined exploding forces. Never in his dreams did Sati expect Achilles to be an Earth-rank warrior. If he had known about this, he would never have underestimated his opponent. Nonetheless, it was too late now. That information was erroneous. The importance of the quality of one's ability X would be even higher upon attaining Earth rank level. If the ability X was relatively ordinary, even if one entered the Earth rank, one would not be able to attain the power to decimate the heavens and Earth. This was obviously Sadie's metallic ability. Wang Zheng's ability X was just as ordinary. However, his compound ability transformed his ability unequivocally. In addition, like Di Maria, once his ability X attained Earth rank level, the combat power would be really fearsome. In this battle, upon attaining Earth rank, Achilles' ability X had transformed too. Sadie's power was being suppressed. What was waiting for Sati in another 10 seconds was certain destruction. Even comparing solely on pure power, he was not a match for Achilles. As a descendant of the Doyle family, what Achilles had experienced was something that Sati could never imagine. Someday, these accumulations would transform from quantitative to qualitative. Growl. Interspace movement. Sati was forced to calm down. The interspace box was finally used in the official competition, instantly eliminating the stalemate. But as soon as it was used, Sati knew something was wrong. The entire mech was immovable, pulling him towards the Heavenly Dragon Knight. Sati was struggling, his ability X rampaging. He was capable of controlling the opponent's mech. He had used it previously, causing his opponent to hack himself to death. Yet now, the two axes flew towards Sati. While using teleportation, he gave up confrontation. Achilles had complete control of the whole situation. Achilles was not Sati. He disliked the chaotic, violent flow. He liked elegant, artistic flow. Cursed. Like an X-shaped decoration, the two axes hacked into the Mad Mob mech, splitting the entire mech apart. Boom. Achilles from Saruman's snake won. The members of Saruman's snake were not surprised. Other than Wang Zheng, the most influential and the one who possessed the most leadership quality in the team was not Zhang Shan. This, at least Zhang Shan was self-aware of. Achilles was introverted and was unwilling to express himself unnecessarily. But no one dared to despise him. He had always been a symbolic figure of the solar system. He was just a step behind Wang Zheng. Yet someone dared to disregard him. Silence filled the stadium. Except for Wang Zheng, every position in Saruman's snake had been a weak link. Yet what was this situation? Gravitation type Earth rank warrior. This was a better natural talent than Wang Zheng's. This was definitely a first for the Storm Battle team. Losing an almost sure win battle so utterly and completely stunned them all. It was a performance of fighters with similar capabilities. The ranks of Achilles totally suppressed Sati. This was a case of encountering embarrassment, not a curse. Still, the Storm Battle team pressed on. Now all they have to do is take a chance. For round 2, the Storm Battle team sent Ma Su. It was a difficult situation for the Storm Battle team. But as a man from Manilasuo, he had to stand firm and believe he could overcome the difficulties. A tower of a man, at 2.3 meters tall, Ma Su was a rare sight to behold. He seemed extraordinarily mighty. Ma Su looked provocatively at Wang Hao and showed him a hand gesture. Wang Zheng smiled. Mu Zhen. Mu Zhen stood up. Everyone appeared dwarfish the moment he stood up. Tita Giant. This was the Tita Giant who surprised everyone in the qualifiers. It was not too surprising that the primitive man was good at the primitive combat, but what about using the mech? Although he knew that the people of Tita were physically huge, in comparison, Ma Su felt that he was, for the first time, small. Hell, what was the use of having a big physique when he was good at technique? Hey, kiddo, being strong is nothing. I'll show you what our human mech technology is made of, said Ma Su imposingly. He felt that the team's energy was a bit depressed, so it needed some momentum. Mu Zhen smiled good-naturedly and chose his mech. Tita Giant mech. The size of this mech was really. Anyone who had seen this mech basically thought that it was too big, not suitable for conventional battle. Being such a big target, it was bound to be the focal strike point, with nowhere to hide. Of course, the terrain of Tita Star and the restrictions on energy weapons would be practical, but Tita Star was just part of the Silver Alliance. Mu Zhen was a primitive person, so he had a lot of adoration and belief for Tita. The giant mech was the obvious choice. Ma Su chose the ace of Manilasuo, the Domineer mech. It had a strong defensive capability while maintaining a compelling maneuverability that allowed him to exhibit his skills. More importantly, the firepower of this mech was intense. Who said that he wanted an hand-to-hand combat with this monster? What happened was a mere appearance. He knew that Mu Zhen would not engage. Under such provocation, any self-respected contender would definitely respond. But this simple-minded man must believe that he had wanted a competition of strength. What a fool! He would finish him off with a blast. This would truly be the crushing of one's IQ. The two warriors go in their mecha. Achilles was back, perspiring, indicating that it was some warm-up. But the opponent was rather weak. Sadie's Earth rank was obviously inadequate. How much longer, Lai Xin? Asked Wang Zheng. Smiling slightly, Lai Xin said, you guys should cut girls a little slack. But this SIG is a good opportunity. Lai Xin needed a bit more time. People who practiced the ancient martial arts generally had a deeper understanding of Ability X. The key was to understand the essence more thoroughly. The two complemented each other without clashing. Together with the existence of the spirits from the Sage sect, Lai Xin was ever more convinced that it was definitely more difficult for women to break through this barrier than men. You are more fearsome than most men, said Achilles. He seemed to be in good spirits. The Earth rank threshold had been plaguing Achilles for a long time. The long strides of Wang Zheng, Olivius, and the others had brought him tremendous pressure and motivation. Although he finally attained Earth rank, Achilles felt that his level of comprehension was a far cry from Wang Zheng's. But he was not worried. More haste, less speed. Patience was the best virtue of the people of the moon, to say the least. Sadie's Earth rank Ability X was not considered strong. In fact, given Wang Zheng's current status, he would be able to read Sati easily. Sending Achilles out for the battle would ensure a win. The giant mech and the Domineer had already engaged in combat in the battlefield. Ma Su was very clear that the long-range attack of the giant mech was actually very ineffective. As soon as the competition began, the shoulder bomber and top laser of the Domineer were all powered up, firing non-stop at Mu Zhen. Mu Zhen had no choice but to use the buildings as cover. The Domineer roared and suppressed. Idiot! Aren't the people of Tita courageous? Get out here! Don't be a coward! Weren't you bragging just now? Get out here if you have guts! In a city battle, the obscuring of buildings was very annoying. But Ma Su was in no hurry. He kept teasing the opponent as he thrusted forward. Neanderthals had relatively low emotional intelligence. They would not be able to endure the provocation. The giant mech moved constantly. With its huge stature, it was difficult to evade. There was another problem. The giant mech was unable to use the teleportation box due to its relatively large size. The amount carried by the teleportation box only worked for standard mecha. Although it could be developed, it was rejected by Co Group in the end. The number of giant mechas was relatively small. As such, most were used for the internal defense of the Tita Star. It was impractical to start a single production line for something that would see little use. As he thrusted forward, Ma Su continued ridicule Mu Gen. The mech of Mu Gen constantly ducked behind cover. But the firepower of the Domineer was too much and he was being forced into a dead end. Coward. Son of AB*TCH. Didn't you brag about being a warrior? Come on. Come out and fight with me. Bellowed Ma Su. The crowd was deafening. But Mu Gen was very calm, not easily aggravated. Unfortunately, it was of little use as he was already trapped in a corner. The Domineer thrusted forward, all firepower armed, firing at 30 meters out. There was no place for the giant mech to hide, unless it could fly. However, just as the Domineer mech appeared, Mu J let out an earth-shattering roar. Rumbling, the giant mech charged towards the Domineer mech. The roar on the ground gave Ma Su a fright. What was this? A joke? The laser and the shoulder guns struck at the same time, smashing into pieces. At this very moment, the wind began to blow. Or more accurately, the storm struck, forming a vortex around the giant mech. Shing! 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 The giant mech actually made a great maneuver, polyline maneuver followed by a parkour wall maneuver. Everyone was stunned for an instant. What the hell was this? The most terrifying thing was that this series of movements was so smooth, the landing was so brisk, and with such a heavy mech. If this feat was executed by any other mech, it would not have been startling. But a giant mech. The giant instantly closed in by 10 meters. The Domineer sprung a sharp claw furiously. Its body gaining momentum, it charged forward with a sudden rampaging rush of power. His ability X exploded, playing flexibility. What the hell? I'll teach you a lesson today. Ma Su cried out in his heart. But as the two mecha approached each other, an overwhelming pressure overcame him. Like a bolt of lightning, that gigantic sword had already come slashing in. Teleportation. This was Ma Su's only reaction. He was soaked to the skin. How could this son of AB*TCH be so strong? He was thoughtful. Brute force and wind ability X were the only abilities that the opponent possessed. Wang Jung could not help but smile. His opponent was juvenile to the extreme. Although not every member of Saruman Snake was a veteran, they had nonetheless seen their fair share of battles. Mu Gen had trained in combat skills since a young age, and had experienced the Tita Wars. He was a true warrior that had crawled back from the clutches of death. Ma Su was like a child waving his plastic sword, unafraid of death. To put distance between them in an instant was an easy feat, especially with such difference in strength. The giant mech seemed to bounce almost instantaneously. It was not an easy feat for a person with average strength to handle such a gigantic mech. But it was different for Mu Gen. His mental capacity was always much stronger than that of human beings. The people of Tita were a nation blessed by the universe. The planet full of vitality gave the Tita people an energy more powerful than the humans. Wang Jung had merely taught them how to exert the energy. Growl. The Domineer's legs were pulled out. The gigantic Domineer mech was then tossed into the air like a helpless chick. Boom, 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 hong, 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 hong. The people of Tita had a temper. Inside his mech, Ma Su was feeling disarrayed as he was being tossed. Aslan used the best simulators. He did not care for anything other than ensuring his survival. To Mu Gen, the Domineer mech was a ferocious beast, the type that the people of Tita were best at dealing with. The Domineer's fangs bit hard and the laser in its mouth was also emptied. This was followed by a punch. Mu Gen held down the Domineer with his body. Boom, 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 boom. Punch after punch, the giant mech's massive fist went slamming in. Pow! Boom! The Domineer was blown apart and sparks flew around. Mu Gen stood up and picked up his big sword. Ma Su was obviously unworthy to be slayed by his sword. In the duels of the people of Tita, only warriors were worthy to die under a sword. Completely crushed, Saruman Snake was next. Ma Su had already been sent to the emergency room. This category of direct vibration had completely stunned him stone cold. This would definitely leave a lasting impression. 2-0. Everyone would have realized by now that even without Wang Zheng, Saruman Snake was the strongest opponent. Everyone who was contesting had made the mistake of disrespecting the other members of Saruman Snake. Saruman Snake had gotten this far not solely through Wang Zheng's merit, but through every member's efforts. Everyone seemed to think too highly of themselves and underestimated their opponents. This was just a warm-up from the very beginning. It did not matter even if the opponent was the Manalasuo battle team. No one was stronger than Saruman Snake in terms of stress. They had learned to be strong and forbearing from their countless battles. Similarly, everyone had made headway in each and every victory. They may not be the strongest, but they were not to be disrespected by anyone. This sort of victory did not mean much to Saruman Snake. As Ai Xiaolu observed everybody's reactions, there was a sense of composure. This showed that the Saruman Snake battle team had revealed signs of the aura of a king. Cheng Hai was next in the third round of the competition. He was Vincent's senior and rumored to be ferocious. Zhang Shan was representing Saruman Snake. Nothing much could be said except to deal with it head-on. Swift Scout pitted against Glass Cannon Warrior. Looking at Zhang Shan's physical strength, his combat experience, and his mental state, coupled with his teleportation ability X, it was baffling why everyone seemed to think that Zhang Shan was weak. The immediate opponent, Cheng Hai, seemed reluctant. Facing an opponent like Zhang Shan, said to be most flexible scout of SIG, any glass cannon warrior would seem trivial. Game over. 2 minutes into the battle, it was apparent that Cheng Hai had crumbled psychologically. The resilience of these people was clearly inferior. After the defeat of their captain, they had completely conceded defeat. An easy win of 3-0 for the Saruman Snake battle team. The battle was over even before a team battle, comfortably advancing to the top 16 battle. Before the start of the challenge, the ambitious Storm battle team was trying to turn the competition around. But they were simply vulnerable, which served as a preview to other opponents. Saruman Snake had nothing to celebrate. No matter how much of an outcast they were now standing at the peak of an elite institution, and only the SIG champion would be alluring. This was only considered a warm-up. Akin to the Saruman Snake battle team, the progress of the Dynasty battle team was relatively smooth. The Sirius battle team was much stronger than the Storm battle team. The first round was won by Zhou Yun. As the successor of the Huban Fists, Zhou Yun's fierceness was unequivocal to no ordinary man. Zhou Yun would seem to transform to another person during any battle, like an unstoppable ferocious tiger. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the captain of the Sirius battle team had to take on the challenge, promptly ruling out Luo Fei. Lear would certainly not suffer head-on. As a substitute, Luo Fei had to play his role as a couplet. Lu Fei's Swift Scout was promptly defeated by the captain of the Sirius battle team. The captain of the Sirius battle team won the round grudgingly. He had no choice but to choose the tactic as he did not expect the Pioneer battle to lose. Peng Tong won the next round. 2-1 in the individual challenge. Next up, team battle. Luo Fei was not left out. Lear took on the central position. Zhou Yun, Peng Tong, and Anluta's physical trigeminal revealed their mighty power. Originating from the Saint sect, the trio had shown tacit understanding during training. This combination was quite formidable. Together with a Mayan's stormy maneuver technique, Sirius did not stand a chance. In the end, the Dynasty battle team successfully defeated the Sirius battle team, advancing to the battle of the last 16. Zhou Yun and the team were elated after the competition. The clans used to indicate the need to be discreet, but that had since been sanctioned. They were young people after all, they would definitely want to boast. They could finally do so now, having gained the ability and the desired platform. This was indeed an irresistible temptation. Lu Fei sat down quietly, still smiling. No one saw it, but Fatty's eyes had a hint of sadness. He had completed his task. He had crushed the opponent's captain. Yet a sense of existence eluded him. In reality, Lu Fei felt conflicted internally. He began hiding his strength out of laziness. He knew that Lear's demands were very high. The faster his growth, the higher his demands. But the power went a little out of control and grew too fast. Luo Fei did not know what Lear would think. Since he was also lazy, he continued to hide. It had now become a burden. Luo Fei was at a loss on what to do. He was not very good at this. The Dynasty Battle team won nonetheless. The trio was strong indeed. Good cooperation. If he had joined in, he would be out of his element, totally out of sync. This was an acceptable console for Luo Fei himself. There was no particular upset in this challenge. The known strong competitors had already advanced. SIG was too unstable. During the transformation period, the warriors who transformed early exploded with greater battle strength. While those who had yet to transform were obviously unable to keep pace. It was basically a one-sided battle amongst the last 32. After the day's battle, the last 16 had emerged. The Saruman Snake would face off against the Dark Knight battle team of the Darkness Empire. Wang Zheng would face off against Gonzalez again. Only this time, Gonzalez would not have the opportunity to escape. As for the Dynasty battle team, Lear lost his smile as soon as he saw the lineup. Because they would face off against an old acquaintance, the Asura battle team led by Mars and Olivius. This was definitely a somber warning to Lear. Even if the lineup was strengthened, Lear still did not believe that his team could defeat the Asura battle team. The ranking was bullshit. The Asura battle team was definitely the strongest team, and the most underrated team. Lear's goal was to advance to the quarterfinals. But what should they do now? When they learned that the opponent was Lear, the Asura battle team was unfazed. For them, so long as it was not the Soulless battle team or the Saruman Snake team, everything else was acceptable. The trio, including Zhou Yun, were unconcerned about Asura. All three were very confident of their own body skills that originated from the Saint sect of the ancient source of Wu. What of the Arbiters? Hidden behind the Silver League, the Saint sect was a force to be reckoned with. In the event of a battle, Arbiter would be effortlessly crushed like a minion. Although the general situation was not something they could intervene with, it was obvious from the activities and orders of the clan that the Saint sect had the intention of re-emerging to the forefront. Of course, this had to be done progressively, discriminatingly, and finally gaining full control. Replicating the era when the Saint sect ruled mankind. But Lear just could not relax. He was not as optimistic as these three guys. These three people should be exploited. Lear thought that it was necessary to at least exploit them before advancing to the quarterfinals. Despite being vulgar-mouthed, they possessed tremendous strength nonetheless. But facing off against the Asura battle team was still a little tricky. Saruman Snake and Asura were the two opponents that Lear did not want to encounter before advancing to the quarterfinals. The battle of the top 32 had been smooth sailing, but when it came to the top 16, the situation was completely different. The first battle unveiled an Elite Academy X internal battle, the Asura battle team versus the Dynasty battle team. There were only 2 rounds of battles a day for the top 16 competition, hence the possibility of an advantage leaning towards one side was very low. There was not much to be said about the Dynasty battle team and the Asura battle team, both sides were extremely familiar with each other. The Dynasty battle team had once been utterly defeated in the hands of the Asura battle team. Having 2 Earth rank warriors and the addition of Arbiter's strict discipline, the Asura battle team was on top. Although they had not acquired the title of the strongest kings, no one could deny that they were the uncrowned kings. They were the strongest in Elite Academy X in terms of abilities, without blind spots, and also the most difficult to handle. The Dynasty battle team's arrangement seemed carefree but extremely mature. This battle appeared to not be very special, but in actuality, their performance was really good. Whether it was about representing Elite Academy X or the qualifying rounds, they had been remarkable. The 2 Mayans' output, coupled with a few people who were unknown but had solid skills, made their fighting capability quite high. However, there was not much of a point as the Asura battle team would definitely swamp them. It was just that the Dynasty battle team were no rookies. The teams that had qualified for the top 32 were pretty much all present as everyone hoped to be able to see the Asura battle team's hidden trump card in this battle. This was something that the Dynasty battle team definitely had the capability to make happen. Whether it was the arrogant Arbiter's soulless battle team or the connected Steel battle team, or the reclusive Mayan Sea Queen battle team, or the high-end, Western-style upper-class Aslan battle team, they would not miss this battle. All the teams that came out on top in every upcoming battle could become their future opponents, so the opportunities to witness the battles should not be missed. This was a completely different notion from watching and replaying videos, as the on-the-spot responses and battle tactics were all live on site. Some detailing issues were what each team's captains and battle tactics analysts needed to pay attention to tactics, while the majority of the members would focus on their counterparts. Dynasty Battle Team. Lear, Zhou Yun, Pang Tong, Anluda, Subaru, made up the main team. Asura Battle Team. Mars, Olivius, Simba, Bayo, Sweeney. With the Van brothers on guard, there were no thoughts about one-on-one battles. Regardless of which one they faced, the opponent was bound to have enough. Both of them were extremely aggressive, and their heavenly overlord attacks could cause despair in people. Mars especially had high prestige in Arbiter, and of course the fact that he did not manage to lead his team to obtain the title of the greatest king had a definite impact on it, but, of course, this was not enough to write off his ability. This SIG was Asura and Mars' opportunity to redeem themselves. The Saruman Snake battle team led by Wang Zheng were all present. Zhang Shan was very shocked to see Luo Fei actually sitting in the reserve seat. That fatty's combat scouting ability was definitely competent enough. Although wretched, it was still kind of a style. The fatty had definitely contributed to Dynasty battle team's great performance at the start, but Lear had actually decided not to care about it. Wang Zheng faintly wrinkled his brows. This matter was a bit strange. Where did Lear discover these new people? They were definitely assertive. They were such low-profile people in Elite Academy X, but had become so great all of a sudden. Wang Zheng had all along felt that Lear was associated with some secret organization. But upon actually investigating, not even a trace of evidence could be found. Maybe he was overthinking it. Lear could have actually possibly uncovered these people. For this battle, the arbiters were still very stable. Mars and Olivius did not underestimate the opponent though. Both sides sent out their vanguards for the first battle. The Asura battle team sent out Olivius without hesitation, which also said something about the flow, that was, they wanted to oppress their opponent. The Mayans were not really suited for one-on-ones, especially after their energy armor routine had been thoroughly understood. They were very easily targeted. As such, the first to go on was Zhou Yun. His aggressive Huban fists made him well suited to be the vanguard. Asura's formidability showed through. Once Olivius was up there, there were no worries of being targeted and they would take the first round, grasping control of the battle. And if Mars caught Lear, then they would be able to take down Dynasty with a score of 3-0. This way, they could save their effort and conserve their strength. Every covetous person down there was easy to deal with. If their tactics had been used once, their second attempt would be useless. Although both teams belonged to Elite Academy X, Olivius had been the man of the moment ever since he entered the school, while Zhou Yun was relatively unknown. The Republic of Clark, although a middle-stream country that was not weak, they were not that strong either. Olivius had chosen the Overlord mech. This was his signature mech, or he might also not want to expose too much, but this mech model was well balanced in terms of offense and defense. It certainly suited his ability X. It made Olivius, who had the ability to create violent shocks and short-term invisibility, very hard to deal with. The mech that Zhou Yun had chosen was Republic of Clark's, Real Steel, a rare mech with fists as weapons. Of course, the fists were specially made and were paired with titanium knives and laser guns, but the fists were borderline useless. This mech model was the sudden inspiration of a designer in the Republic of Clark. He wanted to bring into play the nimbleness of humans, and at the same time prepare for warriors who specialized in boxing. But the effects in combat were not that good. In comparison, knives and swords were more aggressive. The special forces did use them. However, they were not widely used. Mostly those who used them were either very confident in their boxing techniques or paranoid. Wang Jung had also used this mech before. It had strong tenacity, solid lower parts, and focused on upper directional attacks. To put it into words, this fighting type mech model was rarely used in comparison to the popular types, but in terms of facing the Overlord mech, the Overlord mech would have no advantages over it, it would even be an inconvenience. Those present were all professional warriors. Especially for the Manalasuo mechanics, it was even clearer. Although it was rarely seen, it was very useful in a decisive battle. This showed that this person, Zhou Yun, was an expert in martial arts. Olivius had never heard of this person, and neither did he need to, he was just an opponent. He had used the real steel before, but it was a pity that it was not suitable. The Heavenly Overlord attack was not ruled by martial arts. What it pursued was the aura of an overlord, so any type of weapon would do. So this mech that was designed for boxing was a little too much and not well balanced. Zhou Yun had requested to be the vanguard, which was usually Luo Fei's role. He knew, actually, that if he went up, he would be facing either Olivius or Mars, but he craved to know where his capabilities were at exactly. Was it the Heavenly Overlord attack? He was not sure if that could withstand his human fists. The Zhou Yun in the past had always laid low, following training routines step by step, meticulously executing. Since he was 3 until now, he had strictly adhered to the rules of his family. Whether it was his family or the Saint sect, they were unrestrained in this aspect. As he was the direct descendant, he enjoyed treatment that others could not. As such, his human fists was the most complete version. He was the only inheritor of his generation. All he needed was to wait for an opportunity. The Vanguard battle, Olivius vs Zhou Yun. The battle became heated as soon as it started. Everyone had thought that this was a battle swayed towards one side and the unknown Zhou Yun would be hung up and beaten by Olivius, but in actuality, within 5 minutes of the battle, Zhou Yun was going up hard against Olivius, not falling behind at all. It was not boxing tactics at all. Olivius was very clear on this. If it were a boxing routine, it would have been thoroughly defeated by the Heavenly Overlord attack, but the opponent's attacks were an even more coarse, through and through, full-on attack in comparison to the Heavenly Overlord attack. This fellow did not have any movements in the Elite Academy X, but actually also had a mid-B standard. It seemed Elite Academy X still hid some talented individuals. What move are you using? Zhou Yun's real steel struck an offensive pose. The world's #1 boxing, human fists. The corners of Olivia's mouth revealed a merciless smile. #1 in the world. Then let me try and see if you are qualified to be called #1 in the world. The Overlord mech's spear struck the ground. The spear's offensive techniques were a bit of a hindrance against the real steel. This was the genuine boxing specialized offense, and a weapon like a spear would be unable to suppress it and would be in the way instead. Of course, it would be another kind of situation if Ability X was used, but obviously Olivius would not use it first. Zhou Yun took in a deep breath. His entire body's vigor tightened. In the following exchange, he would be able to feel the opponent's strength. The Heavenly Overlord attack was an internal refinement. The moves were completely based on Olivia's cognition through combining tactics from college and the military in actual battles. In ancient martial arts schools, the denomination of directly using boxing techniques had another layer of meaning. Huban once represented the gloriousness of the god of ferociousness, but in these days, it had fallen to the status of a passerby. The inheritors of every generation all had revival as their end goal, but the heavens had never followed as people wished. Knowing that a miracle would befall in his generation, the seal on his abilities had been unlocked and the martial technique that had disappeared was regained. As the inheritor of the Huban fists, he wanted to announce the Huban fists, return to the world. Roar. The Zhou Yun in the cockpit had already changed into a different appearance, the muscles on his body had emerged. It was not that he had a muscle-type ability X, but that it entirely came from his inner strength. His arms had especially became abnormally frightening. The right arm of the real steel violently shook. Kill. The real steel had unexpectedly made a move. The starting speed seemed slow visually, but it sped it in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the Overlord engine roared, skyrocket cannon. Olivius liked ferocious opponents the most. He wanted to see how strong this Huban Fists was. To match with the suppressive, low-altitude skyrocket cannon, Olivius charged directly at the real steel in an arc method. With the Overlord defense and impact strength, this was meaning to break the opponent into pieces. The real steel was already revved up, and facing the Overlord that was about to charge in, he felt no sense of fear. This was to Huban Fists' liking. The world's #1 steel. The stronger the opponent, the stronger it gets. Shing. In a second, not sure whether it was the engine function or an illusion, the real steel was actually sticking to the ground, flying, charging over at high speeds. Boom. A loud bang sounded, as if the sky had collapsed, when he bombarded onto the Overlord big shield, without any fanciful tricks. Smashing down the Overlord with one straight punch, the real steel continued his offense. The Overlord did not even have time to retreat before the real steel's attack arrived. Ferocious tiger form. The immense aura and suffocating murderous intent shrouded the Overlord instantly. The Overlord had defended but had still been hit away from his defense position. Instant coagulation. Flying ferocious tiger. Boom. The Overlord stably defended, but he was still hit into the air by a tremendous force. Olivius did not manage to block it before Zhou Yun had charged forward and immediately grabbed the legs of the Overlord that was about to escape midair. High-pressure scurry. In a flash, there was a violent influx of Ability X, high-pressure electric shock. In that moment of using his Ability X, the real steel's speed was increased, and at the same time, Zhou Yun was moving instantly with only one hand. However, at this timing, the main thing was to prevent Olivius from breaking away. The violent electric current immediately penetrated through the mech and bombarded Olivius. The violent electric currents assaulted continually, and halfway through, the Overlord was picked up midair and struck by Zhou Yun's steel fist. Boom. The Overlord's shield fell apart in an instant and the Overlord flew out in response. This sudden change caused everyone to be shell-shocked. Were they freaking seeing ghosts? Olivius was being violently beaten. Olivius' bearings visibly felt much stronger, but Zhou Yun's techniques were even better, and these techniques were not the regular ones. From the movements, to the offensive boxing moves, they all held a weird uncertainty. This was the strength of ancient martial arts. Through so many years of perfecting, the martial arts hadn't changed much at all. Using ancient techniques on a mech was like hitting a sitting duck. However, when the martial technique worked with the energy in the body, such techniques, especially with the profound strength that his own attacks harbored, could be unfolded. This was not something that quick, accurate, and ruthless simple techniques could match up to. Zhou Yun could feel his heartbeat intensifying. The new era was about to come. He was lucky to be able to witness this era. He had previously seen his own grandfather's generation, training hard day and night, only for it to become something to maintain their health. Strength, the real strength, was recovering. Ka-cha, ka-cha. The Overlord stood up and the corner of Olivia's lips revealed a satisfied expression. It was indeed special. These battle tactics, attacks, and defense were very interesting. It was seemingly intuitive, but the explosive energy that happened upon that second of contact, it was impossible to defend. What a pity, Olivius blandly said. Zhou Yun blinked. Pity about what? One round of offense had already broken his shield, so Olivius would definitely not be able to take a second round. The Heavenly Overlord attack had high internal strength, but the matching tactics were not enough. Ancient strength required ancient techniques. That was what the trio, including Zhou Yun, was proud of. Boom. The Overlord disappeared, violently advancing. What extreme speed. But the sudden disappearance in the midst of the speed was due to the invisibility ability X. Zhou Yun's hair rose. In the blink of an eye, the Overlord was in front of him. Zhou Yun instinctively punched out. However, in that moment, Zhou Yun realized that he had made a huge mistake. He was too obsessed with ancient martial arts, and that person had never said that he wanted to compare notes on fighting skills. This was Sig, this was a battle, except he had lost himself within. Moving in a flash with unchanging posture, the Overlord had already reached the rear side of the real steel. A punch bombarded. Zhou Yun's reaction was extraordinarily quick, opening up his energy shield. Boom. The real steel stood in the spot, unmoving. The energy shield shook violently but remained unbroken. However, Zhou Yun, who was in the cockpit, had suffered a serious hit. He spewed out a mouthful of blood and his whole body turned stiff instantly. Ability X, Exploding Concussion. Human fists, right. Don't be obsessed with the past, time cannot possibly flow backwards. Olivius dully said. Martial techniques were only internal. Having a strong body matched with ample quick attacking methods and having a good grasp of the situation was the way to win. It was also the most effective. If one had enough talent and energy, they should be focused on their ability X. The universe's strength would always be stronger than our own. The Van family had long understood this principle, so they had given up the time spent on those profound and time-consuming ancient martial arts, choosing the essence. Technology and ability X were the main leads of this era. Round 1. Olivius won. Although Asura had won, it was definitely a surprise for many that this Zhou Yun had such ability. It was a pity that his ability X was unable to break through against an Earth rank warrior. Actually, the outcome was destined from the start. This was an era led by ability X, so as long as Olivia's body was strong enough, the opponent would lose undoubtedly. Lear's underling thought too much. Di Maria snickered. The Aslan people had researched a lot on martial techniques, and had even collected a lot despite it not having much use for many years, but nevertheless, Aslan people would never ignore any existence. However, those like Di Maria, who had a mystical ability X, would never neglect the fundamentals to chase after details. Even if there was a day that his battle capabilities were not strong enough, the final victory would still be his. With the recovery of ancient martial art strength, each country in the Milky Way alliance had a resurgence of people with pretty good fighting capabilities, but this was only one method of strength. It was just that they themselves seemed to have blind faith in it. His dreams were bountiful, but they could not become reality. Olivius was still formidable and the Asuras were still unrivaled. It seemed as if he had just missed a step, like he would win if he had put in a bit more strength, but in reality, that was just impossible. But of course, everyone had to acknowledge that Zhou Yun was a strong warrior, that he could match up to the Dynasty Battle team's prestige, but there was no use if he was not victorious. Lear seemed to have predicted it. After all, it was Olivius. It would be strange if he had won. Are you okay? Lear inquired. Once they entered the team battle, Zhou Yun would also be the main force. Zhou Yun wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth. Just a bit of a shock, it's not a big deal. Lear nodded. Our advantage is in tactics, but we must still be rational. This is a good lesson. Zhou Yun nodded his head. It was really as such. He could only humbly accept that the most important part was that he had too few battling experiences with such experts. The meaning behind this battle was not to compare notes, but to compete. It could even be a battle to the death. It was obvious that he was not thinking straight in the battle just now. Although he was fanatic, he had made too many mistakes. Lear knew, and Olivius was even clearer now. After that interaction, he felt that the opponent's methods of attacking were very routine and highly special. It was filled with a martial arts competition. Phelan had a lot of potential, but it had deviated. They were soldiers, not martial artists, and even more so not acrobats. Anluta immediately stood up. Lear, let me do the next battle. I guarantee that I will finish them. Between the ancient martial arts trio, Anluta had the most desire to become famous. He indeed had quite good capabilities, but he seemed to have forgotten that Lear was the captain. Lear gave a slight smile. Are you sure? I am certain. Even if Mars goes up, he will be thrashed as well. Ability X has no effect on me. Anluta's ability X was a scarcely seen deceleration field which belonged to a special type of ability X. Once anyone entered within a 50-meter range, all the attacks would be decelerated, and at the same time, the effects of ability X will be discounted. Although it was not at the level of complete immunity, its weakening ability would strengthen as the target came closer. With his robust physique, he would be able to handle it. Anluta chose the Wind God. His martial technique was the rising winds technique, a technique that adjusted the body's speed and frequency, and it also had a set of matching successive assassination skills. Accelerating the opponent and oneself, Anluta sure had the capability of acting dumb. Anluta was up. He did not care about what mech the opponent was using, or what position. It did not matter. With the addition of the ability to teleport, he was going to kill them off. Lear was as calm as usual, but Luo Fei was a bit anxious, and upon giving a glance, he stopped himself from saying anything. The three of them did have the skill, it was just that they were too anxious to show off. The SIG was a good time to do so, but even if they were capable, they would also need to be stable to stand a chance. On top of that, this was a top 16 battle. Lear used to have a personality that liked to instill fear. He hated people who went against him the most, but recently, he had undergone a huge change, so Fatty did not dare to say anything. On Arbiter's side, Mars gazed around. Sweeney, you're up. Leave it to me. Sweeney licked her lips, appearing exceptionally unfeeling and devilish. Sweeney was using the habitually used Reaper as usual. Come on, Sweeney. The Saruman snake's side suddenly belted. Zhongshan. Everyone was dumbfounded. What was this fellow playing at? Zhongshan, however, did not seem to care at all. Although the relationship between him and Sweeney was slightly strange, at the very least, they were still friends with benefits with invested feelings, so he stood his ground. Practically speaking, he really could not stand Lear in the trio. Ai Xiaolu glared at Zhongshan. This fellow was like a walking time bomb, always doing unexpected things out of the norm. Not saying anything, the corners of Sweeney's lips revealed a rare hint of a smile. The people of Arbiter liked true temperaments and straightness, so being weird was nothing to them. The Dynasty battle team is basically finished, Di Maria stated. There was a hint of disappointment in his words. How to say it? Lear was like a poster guy. There were too many people like that, but in Elite Academy X, Lear's performance was certainly not bad. Di Maria had also wanted to strengthen their cooperation with each other. Other than that, Aslan had also wished to strengthen the relationship with the solar system. The Kronos family were conservatively deep-rooted there, and in comparison to the emerging radical forces, were better suited to Aslan's requirements. Chenkinzade's attention was instead all on Wang Zheng, whose injuries had recovered. Having heard the situation of the later part of the battle, Chenkinzade was undergoing an internal turmoil and was having contradicting feelings. He personally admired Wang Zheng quite a bit in terms of ability, however, they were opponents that could not be tolerated. Although he wished to face Saruman Snake, deep down, he did not know how to handle Wang Zheng. This person was able to heavily pressure him even just by sitting there. Lin Feng gently pat Chenkinzade. Don't be overly concerned. Chenkinzade nodded his head. Di Maria was still very relaxed as he had someone to share delights and hardships with. This proved that Wang Zheng was a monster, and it was not that he was not good enough. This Lear is not simple. You all can wait for the good show coming. Lin Feng turned and smiled, causing the other two to be stunned. Brother Lin, could it be that you got it wrong? That fellow is just a bootlicker who wants to climb to higher positions. Looking at him right now, he does not even have control over the Dynasty battle team. Di Maria disagreed. He had investigated the Dynasty battle team before. It seemed that Lear had given the two Mayans a lot of benefits to get them to agree to help him, in addition to the fact that he was an expert in bootlicking. He had brains and tolerance, but his ability was not yet there. Lin Feng laughed out. Just watch. Do you really think that so many people came just to watch the people of Arbiter oppress some weaklings? In the arena, Anluta's wind god fell into a fully passive state as Sweeney had not planned to battle him directly. She instead used the scout's specialization, harassment. The ability to be invisible for long periods, on top of rapid explosive energy, could cause Sweeney's victim to immediately leave the battle without even getting hit once. Anluta, who wholeheartedly wanted to show off his control skills, could not stand the thought of it, and he was completely fuming. His control over the wind god and his ability X were not bad, but he made the same mistakes that Zhou Yun had made, and it was even worse compared to Zhou Yun's. Even if one was at the level of the top 10 captains, no one would dare to be so arrogantly confident. Anluta and Zhou Yun's confidence were slightly over the top. There were a lot of methods to battle. It is not possible to expect the opponent to always follow according to your needs. Sweeney was not oblivious. She did not have absolute certainty. What she definitely had to do was use her own flow and not care about the time or place. The most important thing was to finish off the opponent. With just a few probes, she was able to sound out the traits of the opponent's ability X, the effect of extending impact. Next would be the fatal move. Anluta's Wind God continued to pursue. The Wind God was definitely fast, but the Reaper was also a famous Arbiter scout mech. With Sweeney's sudden blinding ability in the large arena, she was completely playing the opponent. She could easily pull away the distance just by slightly changing directions. Anluta's performance was too immature. Lear gave Zhou Yun and Pang Tong a look. Do you all realize how stupid you were? Zhou Yun lowered his head. Pang Tong, as an onlooker, naturally could see it clearly, but he was still unconvinced. The opponents are either too crafty or too strong. Lear smiled. The smile itself was not the issue, but Pang Tong was pricked by the contempt and ridicule in his eyes. Pang Tong could not continue on. It would make him appear especially childish. Anluta, who was on the stage at this moment, was about to explode. Sweeney basically did not provide him with a chance to perform at all. Sweeney had total grasp of the mood and general situation since the start. Anluta roared madly as he charged out of the cabin. I refuse to accept this. Stinking woman, do you dare to use a real weapon to fight? I promise that I won't beat you to death. Anluta looked ferocious. His expectations had been too high, and in the end, he was defeated by a woman he thought of as inferior. He had lost his control already. Sweeney came out, coldly looking at Anluta. The whole place was buzzed with discussions. This truly was thoroughly embarrassing. They did not expect there to be such a mentally weak fellow in SIG's top 16 battle. Ping! Lear's pocket knife hit Anluta's neck in one move and he conveniently threw him aside, where Pang Tong and Zhou Yun promptly caught him. Lear slightly smiled. Sorry, we've made everyone witness a joke. We originally wanted to come and train ourselves but did not expect this fella to be so fragile. The following match will not disappoint everyone. In an instant, all the attention was focused on Lear. This fellow sure talked big. They were already this fact, and he was still acting dumb. Training. Did the lowly Dynasty battle team have such rights facing against Asura? On Arbiter's Asura side, Mars had stood up by now. It was the third round, so he would go up regardless of who Lear sent. This, in chess, was called checkmate. Everyone was looking at Lear, but Lear just slowly made his way down, walking one step at a time towards Luo Fei. Luo Fei did not have a good feeling about it. Lear pat Luo Fei's shoulders and leaned towards his ear. Finish him off and I will forgive you. Boss, Fatty stuttered. He was the only one who knew Lear's true personality. Lear's voice, which sounded like it had been bathed in the spring breeze, was as good as the devil's knock on the door. Fatty had wanted to hide his ability. He could conceal it over a period of time, but how could it be forever hidden? Such a meticulously minded person like Lear had found it out only when they were having harsh training sessions on Tita a while ago. Lear did not fear ambitious but visibly useless people like Anluta and others, but he absolutely hated being lied to by others, especially by the people he trusted. It was just that he knew Luo Fei's personality. He was lazy at the start, and later on, it became fear. After a long time had passed, it became contradicting, and he did not dare to speak about it again. This was why he was giving Luo Fei a chance, and it was also because it was Luo Fei. I know you can do it. If you can't, you can disappear on your own. For the sake of our past relationship, I will not make it difficult for the others, Lear said with a slight smile and a low voice. From an outsider's view, it seemed like a sort of encouragement. Luo Fei's chubby face trembled. He understood what Lear meant. What had been given to him could be taken away from him any time. Boss, I was wrong. It won't happen again in the future. Luo Fei exclaimed. Lear waved his hands and went back to his seat. What he wanted was not such nonsensical talk, but results. Anluta had awoken a while ago and saw that Lear was actually sending Luo Fei up for the final battle. Facing against Mars, wasn't this just courting death? The Dynasty Battle team was going to cease here. He had just wanted to speak, but upon feeling Lear's cold glance, filled with killing intent, his body instantly felt a chill. Pang Tong and Zhou Yun had long stopped speaking. Lear was chosen to be a saint candidate instead of them. Was it that the saint was blind? It was not that the saint was blind, but they were. When Luo Fei entered the battle, a majority of the people present were stupefied. Were they planning to give up? Once the Dynasty Battle team lost this battle, they could pack their bags and go home straight away. Their opponent was Mars. Some people let out their laughter. When this fatty went on stage, he kept looking back. He simply looked like a kid abandoned by his parents. But when he walked up the last step, the hesitation on his face thoroughly vanished. Mars wrinkled his eyebrows. This Luo Fei, excluding his physique and attitude, was actually not bad, but what did Lear mean by this? An expressionless Lear dismissed Mars' gaze. FCK, what is Lear trying to do? Is he making Luo Fei carry the burden? Zhang Shan was not content. He is just a weak ass. All those who were familiar with the Dynasty Battle team were shocked. If the captain were to go up at this moment, it would just end. If they lost, they would at least lose decently. In the end, they had sent out a substitute to go against Asura's captain. The idiom, accepting one's loss in order to secure 2 wins, was not to be used like this. Here comes the interesting part. Lin Feng chuckled. Di Maria was dumbfounded for a moment. Others may not know it, but he was a student at Elite Academy X, hence he would know what that fatty was like. Brother Lin, are you joking, that fatty? Hee, this fatty, just based on individual capabilities, could be considered one of the top 5 here, or maybe even slightly stronger. Lin Feng gently laughed. In that second, everyone around who had heard this all widened their eyes. Their only thoughts were that, was Lin Feng drunk? He was speaking such nonsense early in the day. On Saruman Snake's end, Wang Zheng gathered his spirits. If I had to choose an opponent that I was not willing to face against, it would definitely be Luo Fei. The whole of Saruman Snake gazed at Wang Zheng dumbfoundedly. What was this? Strength was made out of 99% hard work and 1% talent, but at times, that 1% talent was the key. This was how Luo Fei could be described as. The first time he saw the other side of Luo Fei, Wang Zheng felt threatened. The moment Luo Fei entered the stage, Dina Atlas finally showed interest. Within these people, there are some that possessed special strengths that allowed them to understand some scary things. Luo Fei had hidden it very deep, to the point where he himself had chosen to forget his inner scary side, but it still existed and could not go away. The atmosphere became extremely rowdy the minute Luo Fei stepped on stage. There was a number of Aslan students pointing fingers at him. Wow, this flesh can even kill now. How did the Dynasty Battle team manage to mix in a person like that and even allow him to enter the battlefield? Zhang Shan was originally worried, but the next moment, he was silent. He suddenly thought of a matter. The qualifying rounds. Those who would help him had no capabilities, but those who did would not help him. However, if it were according to what Wang Zheng had mentioned, then it was definitely Luo Fei. His stealth in the jungle was extremely effective, he definitely could not be detected. But, facing against Mars, it was unimaginable. Even if their brains were racked, they still would not know how to deal with Mars. This weird creature did not have any blind spots or weak points. Unless they went up with violence against violence like Wang Zheng had done, any other gaudy methods would be courting death in front of Mars. At this moment, Aslan's top 4 beautiful women were feeling very delighted. Wei Yan had watched the Saruman Snake Battle team continuously advance, and these competitions were not as dangerous as the qualifying round. It seemed that her sister had exercised her powers. Now she did not have to be so anxious. It was okay to fail, just as long as they lived. This fatty is quite cute. Mars is a well-known figure of Arbiter's younger generation. Will this fatty be enough for him to beat up? I don't know, I only look at handsome guys. Qian Shuidi had lost interest. Looks were still very important. Mars had chosen the Conqueror Alpha. He had absolutely given Luo Fei enough respect. The people of Arbiter were very upright. Even if they were up against a weak opponent, they rarely played any tricks. This was an uncommon sight in the Milky Way alliance. They had trained a group of young people into mature, little old men. All the attention was on Luo Fei. This fatty was actually, really pondering through. FCK this. Just randomly choose one to send off to its death and end this. Is there a need to put in so much effort? Maybe this fatty knows his stuff. And you believe that, even if that fatty has some lethal tactic, his opponent is Mars. In the whole of the Elite Academy X, besides Wang Zheng, he was at the top. If this fatty can win, I will run around nude. That's true, actually. How big of a courage would it take to do as such? The pressure was not only on Luo Fei. On the contrary, Luo Fei was just a clown for everyone to laugh at. The crux of the issue was Lear. Sending out such a person at such a time, what did he mean by that? Luo Fei had alternately used the Wind God and the Storm Swordsman as his mecha, and had even tried the Phantom King. Beneath, there was an uproar. Was he really seriously thinking it over? Or trying to imitate Wang Zheng? There was basically no one present that had not seen the battle between the strongest kings. There was nothing much about an extravagant battle, as even a battle between two weaklings could be flashy. However, it was a different situation if the opponent was Mars. The skills and types of astounding moves used completely depended on the opponent. It must be understood that under sufficient pressure and confrontation, impractical showiness would mean looking for death. Wang Zheng was also looking at what Luo Fei would choose in the end. Actually, against Arbiter people, especially for Mars, whose core laid in his mech's resilience. Luo Fei's choice was set on the Hercules. This leading product from OMG had only one unique trait, and that was that it was stable. Could he triumph over Mars just by relying on stability? Luo Fei was a scout. Zhou Yun and the others also looked at Lear, not knowing what he was actually up to, but they at least knew one thing: Lear would absolutely not give up. If their journey were to stop here, especially with such a cowardly performance, it will be a complete failure in the eyes of the Saint sect. It could be said that from the moment he failed, he would be abandoned. Lear was not such an irrational person. Being gutless and enduring silently were two separate things. Did Lear have absolute certainty? Nobody knew, and Lear himself also did not know what level had Luo Fei trained to. Nonetheless, he knew that Luo Fei had an ability that no one else knew, even Luo Fei himself was not clear about it. And that was that whenever he wanted to abandon Luo Fei, this fellow could do all sorts of unfathomable things. He would enter this extreme state, which had appeared more than once when they were training on Earth in the past. When he did so, Luo Fei himself would forget everything once he finished it, but Lear had seen it clearly. Calm and collected, Lear was not even a tiny bit of that. His big plan had reached the critical stage. It was not possible for him to determine the outcome every time. Sometimes in life, a gamble was required. This was one of them. Lear usually did not care what Luo Fei did, but this time, Luo Wei was his lethal tactic. Placing him in the substitute position at the start was actually just to set that betting, to tell Luo Fei that he was angry, that he was really for real this time. As for the rest, it was up to the heavens. Lear was very crystal clear on one thing: he would not go far just by relying on himself only. Luo Fei had made his choice, the Hercules. On the mech conveyor belt, the Hercules was delivered to the cockpit at rapid speed. The current Luo Fei's gaze was situated in an unusual state. He was very clear that Lear was not joking with him. Luo Fei had been getting more and more worried about his increase in ability during this period. Upon thinking that Lear would find out sometime soon, he was all the more afraid. At the end, it still happened. However, Lear had given him one chance. If so, whoever tried to stop him today would die. The contenders from both sides entered their mecha. Mars lightly wrinkled his eyebrows. Hercules. He had indeed been defeated in the hands of the Hercules, but that was Wang Zheng's Hercules, not some other person's. In Wang Zheng's hands, astonishing strength could explode through the Hercules, but in a majority of people's hands, it was of little value because this mech's functions were too basic. Its durability was suitable for doing manual labor, but this did not mean that it was suitable for battle. The crowd was in an uproar. Was this an attempt to self-hypnotize? Practically no one had been able to imitate Wang Zheng's rotating shovel, and those who had tried had all been beaten like dogs. Conqueror Alpha vs Hercules. With two mecha, the battle to decide the Dynasty Battle team's fate began. Either they would go home or they would continue on. The Conqueror Alpha and the Hercules had appeared. Luo Fei liked to be coy and restrained, but against Mars, it was no use. He understood this point as well. The alloy shovel was casually thrown on the ground and the Hercules pulled out a titanium blade. It was obvious that Luo Fei did not know how to maneuver the shovel. Having something like a shovel in hand could also be a hindrance. Mars had also unsheathed his titanium blade. A dangerous aura kept lingering around in the air. Was this a misperception? The two mecha were getting closer and closer. The moment Luo Fei decided to choose the Hercules, he would not be playing guerrilla warfare, doing so would be meaningless. Just as the two mecha were just 10 meters apart, both mecha stopped at the same time. An imposing pressure emitted from both warriors within their mecha. Mars' Heavenly Overlord attack, aside from Wang Zheng, had never met his match. Pressing down opponents with grandeur like a ferocious tiger descending the mountain, it had been originated from a mix between ancient martial arts and Earth 2 warriors' oppressive pressure. The aura enveloped the Hercules straight away. What was this fatty up to? A second after. Boom. A soaring aura burst open, directly dissipating the Heavenly Overlord attack's shroud. It was a completely head-on attack, seemingly not falling behind. Fatty's eyes were filled with quicksilver-like radiance. His entire body seemed like soft flesh, but what every cell contained was pure vital strength. Mars smiled. This was interesting. This fellow had disguised himself very well all this while. All there was now was to see if it was only just impressive and worthless. Boom, boom. Almost at the same time, both engines started. With strong control and sudden explosiveness, they reached center stage in a flash. Their titanium blades struck at each other. Whoom. An energy wave ripped open. The energy level was far beyond what those in the previous battles could compare to. The two titanium blades intertwined together. Luo Fei was actually standing firm against Mars' strength. Titled the strongest Heavenly Overlord attack in the galaxy. 3 seconds later, the Hercules' titanium blade was suddenly pressed down aggressively. As the Hercules' height was relatively shorter, under the sudden pressure, a vicious side kick had swooped over. If he had been kicked by the Conqueror's leg, it would have definitely been serious. However, the Hercules seemed to have predicted it and conveniently turned his body, sending over a roundhouse kick. Boom. Subduing the mech right in the center, this one kick sent Mars flying out. Instantly, the crowd went silent.